Good evening and welcome to In My Humble Opinion. I'm your host, Niceguy. My guest tonight is a professional cartoonist and performer. Her most well-known works include I've Been Kidnapped by Lesbian Pirates from Outer Space, You and Me Dream, and Meaty Yogurt. It is my pleasure to welcome Megan Rose Gedris. Megan, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I understand you just got back from tour. What's that all about?
Yeah, we were on tour for something like 5 weeks. It was one of our longest tours in a while.
And who is we?
We is Super Happy Fun Time Burlesque. It's a big burlesque troupe I'm a part of. I've been with it for a few years, and we all pile into this old school bus that we live in. We fit a dozen of us on this bus, and we travel all around the United States. We went southwest to Arizona. We went northeast to New York City, and everywhere in between, up, down, left, right, all over the place.
Wow. And now, I think some people out there might have an idea of what exactly burlesque means, and I already know from watching some of the videos, and I'll mention the website in a second, that they're probably have a misconception. So can you describe a little bit about the show and about what you guys do?
There's a lot of different kinds of burlesque. I mean, there's the whole typical image that people have that first comes to mind, the feather fans and sequins and jazz music, and there's definitely
can
plenty
dancers.
of that out there.
Yeah.
I get asked a lot of times, oh, is it just like that movie with Christina Aguilera? And, that's one type of burlesque, but that's not the type that we're doing. Ours is, it's a lot of comedy.
Yeah.
We have a live band that writes all original music, and they're kind of skewing punk rock these days. So it's a lot of, heavy guitar and weird saxophone parts.
And there are some videos out there if anybody would like to see, and I think this would definitely I think anybody watching this would definitely be interested in seeing the show. It's on superhappyfuntimeburlesque.com. That's all one word, spell it right. And in fact, just before we started tonight, I watched a couple that jumped out at me. Necrophilia.
Oh yeah, that was a fun day.
Yeah.
Making that movie.
That was pretty creepy, actually. That was you on the swing, right?
That was me.
So you were kind of in a Lolita kind of role there, and
getting kidnapped by a creepy old guy.
Oh yeah, it was pretty creepy. And then but the song was great. The whole thing was and then the next one was Can't Make Fun of Jesus.
Yes, that one is based on so many true stories.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, that's so our show, we cross a lot of lines as far as making fun of things that people might consider sacred, like Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus is always in the show. Jesus is pole dancing or menstruating or jizzing on someone. And we'll do all kinds of crazy things in the show. And we've actually had people come up after the show and be like, the objectification of women was fantastic, but you can't make fun of Jesus. That's too far. And it happens all the time. Like there was this one woman who stormed out and flipped the merch table on the way out.
Oh, God.
This one woman.
Well, that is very Christ-like. Losing your shit and flipping over tables is absolutely an option when you ask, what would Jesus do?
That's true. I didn't think of that. That was kind of fittingly biblical of her.
God.
But I had this woman who decided to wear to the burlesque show a sweater with a giant cross on it. I had her come up and threaten to punch us all in the face.
Well, at least she liked the show.
Oh yeah, and we had even sung that song that night, the "You Can't Make Fun of Jesus" song, which is, the song is basically naming a whole bunch of horrible things that you can do on stage, but you can't make fun of Jesus.
Right.
And we had just finished singing this song, and she came up and, without any sort of self-awareness, basically repeated the message of the song to us.
And now I also wonder, because this isn't exactly a family-friendly show, I guess, just to spoiler guys, there's a lot of boobs in this show. If you like that sort of thing.
It wouldn't be burlesque without boobs. Burlesque isn't just boobs.
Right. No. But there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of boobs. It
Yeah.
wouldn't quite be the same.
So now, do you also? I also understand that you do. You've done just straight stand up as well. Is that right?
I have. I've done a little bit of it here and there. One of the nice things about moving to Chicago is there's definitely more opportunities to expand both in burlesque and stand-up comedy and comics and basically everything that I do. So I'm looking forward to branching out and getting to do a bit more of that than I've done already.
Yeah, that's great. Now you're based. I know you're in Chicago now. You were from Grand Rapids originally, right?
Yeah, and I'm still back and forth. You know, the
Okay.
Super Happy Fun Time is based in Grand Rapids.
Oh, okay. Do you guys
It
ever get out to the Detroit area?
Oh yeah, we're going to be in Detroit
Ooh,
on June 14th.
June. Why do I think I'm not going to be in town on June 14th? I'll have to
Oh,
check
thanks
that
to
out.
whatever else you've got going on.
That's why I'm very much interested now. So June 14th, I'm going to jot that down. Anybody here who's listening who's in the Detroit area, June 14th, and the website also. I thought it had a schedule, but when I saw videos, I decided to check those instead of the schedule. So I apologize for that, but I do understand the schedule is posted there as well.
Yep, all of
So
our show dates.
so okay, and now I also want to talk. I do want to talk a bit about the comics that you write. And you have a lot of comics, but there's well, the main one right now that you're doing is Meaty Yogurt.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? What that's about?
That is about a woman who grows up in kind of a small town, not super teeny tiny out in the middle of nowhere, but just, you know, a very average town. And she is led to believe that there's a curse on this town that anyone born there will die there. You don't, it's not that you can't leave, it's just that
You'll come back.
you'll always come back.
Right.
You'll always come back. And I know that this is I know a lot of people who definitely feel that about the town that they live in. I know that when I was graduating high school, there was this, rumor that was true of our town too, that, all of us were going to go off to college, but we'll all eventually come back to Grand Rapids and, die there.
I swear there's something about the state of Michigan like that. I'm not from here originally. I live in the Detroit area and I moved here going on about 20 years ago, but everybody I know has lived there their whole life and like very few people come from anywhere else and very few people leave, it seems.
Yeah. I mean, Michigan is beautiful.
Yeah. Oh
It's
yeah, no,
beautiful.
I'm not
I
down
like
on
it
it,
a
but
lot better now that I don't live there, though. I like to visit. I like to visit, but I like the Chicago culture a lot.
Now the name Meaty Yogurt. And I know that you've probably told this a bunch of times, but where does that name come from?
Originally, the comic was called Mediocre,
Uh-huh.
as in, average or whatever. But
Right.
I worried that calling a story mediocre would make it way too easy for critics.
Just in case, huh?
I wanted them to have to work a little bit if they were going to, give me any sort of harsh criticism. So,
Right.
I think it was Brad Guigar who said that when he hears the word mediocre, he always thinks that someone has said meaty yogurt.
Right.
And I was like, all right, let's go with
Which
that.
just sounds revolting.
I know.
but
No,
yeah.
I was thinking like Greek food, you get like
yeah, that's
gyro
true.
with
That's
that
true.
yogurt sauce.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And you take a very different approach with this. A very unconventional protagonist. Yes, the main thing I think that people would notice right away, she does not exactly have a body type that's generally considered conventionally attractive. I mean, comments on the site have described her as, I've seen her described as curvy, chubby, and lumpy even. And
I mean, she's a fat gal, and she owns it,
Yeah, well, that was the other thing is even with that, it's barely mentioned in the story. She doesn't obsess over dieting or is down on herself about appearance. I mean, she's like you say, she does own it, and I think that confidence comes off as very sexy, actually. And I think it was only mentioned really twice that I can recall. I think once during an arc where they were clothes shopping, and then once prior to her getting that really weird modeling job with the guy with the honey and the Legos.
Yeah.
How's that for a teaser, guys? Everyone's got to go check out what that's all about now.
I mean, this all comes just from, I write characters like people that I know. And, I know all of these fantastic people with bodies like that. And their lives don't revolve around it. They have so much more interesting to their lives than just what their body looks like. But at the same time, their body is important to them, and they want to be seen in stories the same way anyone else does. So I really wanted to just make characters that are like the sorts of people that I know.
Right. And also for a I mean, she definitely has a sense of adventure, sense of humor and all that, but she's pretty scatterbrained, pretty all over the map, which I think a lot of us can relate to. But I almost feel like there's a bit of a feminist deconstruction going on here, because she's very strong-willed, very bullheaded, totally does her own thing, doesn't play by the conventions, the rules really. But her life is such a hot mess that she really can't ever get past square one with any of the harebrained schemes or adventures or whatever it is she tries to do. I almost feel like if she were to try to be a burlesque performer, she'd get about as far as Saffron making her a dress and then have to move on to something else. And in fact,
absolutely,
she might make a plot. Actually, didn't that actually happen?
Kitten. She'd end up being a stage kitten, and then realize, oh, I don't get to go on stage. No one's clapping for me, and I have to do all this work. This blows. I quit.
Right. And the other weird thing about this town. And I don't know, I mean, don't really reveal any spoilers, but it seems like there's a lot of really next level stuff going on. There's aliens, there's demons, there's really crazy stuff that she just seems completely oblivious to, despite the fact that she's looking for this kind of experience, this sort of anything that's out of the ordinary.
Yeah, well, isn't that how it goes? If you're looking for something, you never find it. It's always just going to be right behind you the whole time.
Now, what? This is going to be a funny way to put this. I don't know how to ask it otherwise. But I guess just in terms of her character and her as a character, am I supposed to have as big a crush on Jackie as I do?
Oh, that's really sweet. So many people. I get a lot of feedback of like, Jackie's so surly and kind of mean, and she's like way too blunt all the time, and I don't know how anybody could like her. And then there's a whole bunch of other people who really love her.
Yeah.
And I really love her. I do. She has a lot of problems. She definitely does, but she is very sweet, and she is very loyal, almost to her own detriment.
Right.
And she is really cute. I mean, even just
she's
physically,
adorable.
she's
such
fantastic. Yeah.
I'm watching this and because I get the sense sometimes that, I mean, she's not supposed to be a straight up positive character. I mean, she is written and she's drawn in a way that's going to elicit negative reactions from people as well. But and I'm not surprised that you do get both kinds of feedback, because she's not a simple character. She's not a two-dimensional character by any stretch. But as I'm reading this, I'm going, there was definitely at some point in my life, there had to be a time in my life that I totally would have went for this person in real life.
Oh yeah, we've all had that time. And I think we're so used to a lot of characters, especially female characters, being written with so few flaws, like unrealistically so.
Right.
Everyone has those sharp edges to them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times just, if you met Jackie in real life, she'd just be a normal woman. You wouldn't consider her probably extra negative or anything, or extra surly, or
I mean, I think she'd be such a kook. I mean, she'd be such a trip to hang around with, I would think. But
I know. I've got friends like her. I love them so much.
And so you mentioned that a lot of the characters are based on people you know. So I mean, does that mean there's a Saffron in your life, or a Myra, and where are you in all of your characters?
There's never a one-to-one translation. Okay. Like, this character is never this person. I take all the people that I know and myself and kind of chop us all into bits, and then take the pieces and Frankenstein them back together. So,
right.
A little bit from this person, a little bit from this person, a little bit from me, put that together into one person, and then take the rest of the pieces and assemble them into other people.
Yeah. So so if I were to ask you who you were most like, Jackie, Saffron, or Myra, for example, there's a little bit of you in all of them. There's a little bit of other people.
Absolutely. Like with Jackie, I definitely had that time. The whole comic got started around the time I realized I was never going to learn to play the guitar. I I had been dragging this guitar with me from move to move, and I've still done it. I gave up playing the guitar, and yet I still move it along with me whenever I move. But I just had this realization, like, I bought this guitar, but I'm really never going to learn to play it. It's been gathering dust for years. And so, there's definitely a tendency in me to pick up a weird hobby for a couple weeks and, ultimately discard it. Luckily, comics stuck. So that I could,
lucky for all
so
of us.
I could do something.
So what? I'm sorry. Go
Saffron, she's got a lot of creativity to her. I love to sew, like Saffron, who's the fashion designer.
Right.
With Moira, I go on tour.
Yes.
I live in a tour bus. Like she's like a real rock star, though. She gets like a fancy tour bus and like big shows with lots and lots of people. And I'm sure they have real dressing rooms all the time and they don't have to get dressed on their bus. But yeah, so I can put a little bit of my experience into that.
Okay. Now, and you mentioned the sort of the hobbies, and that's kind of one of the traits that you share with Jackie. And I'm kind of wondering, when you first decided that you were going to pursue burlesque, I kind of wonder about the reactions of friends and family, because it's not exactly something you hear all the time, that I'm going to go be a burlesque performer.
I feel like a lot of people I know have wanted to be a burlesque performer, or maybe it's just because I am a burlesque performer that I get a lot of people saying, "Oh, it looks so much fun. I wish I could do that."
Well, I mean, watching those videos, yeah, it looks like a blast.
It's a lot of fun. Until you like inhale half a pound of glitter and then you have a chronic cough for 2 months. So it's but yeah, I kind of fell into it accidentally. I thought they were hiring singers,
a burlesque troupe,
and they were hiring dancers.
Okay.
But I just went with it. I love performing in any capacity. So yeah, I just went with it. And I remember, talking to my mom after the first day of rehearsal and telling her, well, I'm a burlesque dancer now. And I'm not sure if she quite knew what that entailed, but she was just so proud. She went and like told all of my relatives, and then they tried to come to one of the shows, and I had to be like, wait, no, you can't do this.
I was gonna wonder, because I guess it's, again, remember guys, lots of boobs. I was kind of wondering, it's one thing to perform and do a show like that in front of just a generic audience, but I do wonder if if your mom comes to the show, or if your dad comes to the show, and how that, how you feel about that, and how they would react to that.
My parents are very supportive. They've watched any performance I've done that doesn't have my boobs in it. Which is not a lot. I think like last fall was the first thing I'd done without my boobs in it in so many years. But they watched it and they were very proud, and they like to help out when they can. My mom sews as well. My dad has built sets for the show many times, and he's fixed our bus a couple times so that we
Comes
have
in handy.
lower odds of dying on the road in the middle of the desert.
Right. And I guess, and I just want to wrap up this portion just by saying, and even though we've, I think if we could almost make a drinking game out of the number of times you and I have said boobs in this section, this is not porn. This is not a strip show. It is bawdy, certainly, but it's topical, and it's comedy, and it's funny, and it's there's definitely there's a point to it, and it's definitely something I think I definitely want to check out. June 14th, I'm going to have to pencil that in and see if I can get out there.
Yeah, just drop whatever else you're doing.
I think I'm going to. After seeing those videos tonight, I thought, wow, this is hilarious. I've got to see this. So I want to ask you a bit about the comic through which I first became aware of your work, and this is one of the few that I would just describe as a true true webcomic masterpiece. You and Me Dream.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that. And I guess before you do, I don't know if the big spoiler is still considered a spoiler all these years later, or...
I like to tell people about it.
Okay, all right, then. Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. Okay. Wasn't sure how
It
you'd feel
makes
about
it
that.
a whole lot more interesting. Basically, it's about, meeting the girl of your dreams who ends up actually being the girl of your dreams. She's literally a dream. You're literally asleep and dreaming of this girl.
Hmm.
She is not real. You wake up. What do you do? So this is what happens to Fiona.
Yeah.
So there's a good like 400 pages of comics
Yeah.
of this girl meets girl story.
Oh, was it that long?
It was that long. Yeah, it's about
Okay.
half and half. So there's about,
And
450 or so pages of,
yeah.
Fiona's a high school senior, doesn't have a lot of friends. And so just this whole process of, making friends,
Mm-hmm.
learning about herself, puberty, all that fun stuff, and meeting and falling in love with this
Mm-hmm.
girl.
Yeah.
Um,
Because she's a lesbian at a very strict Catholic school.
yes,
So
there is
that's
that.
also a source of
Yes.
conflict. And you got a lot of readers really angry at you when you did this sort of don't take this the wrong way, think Sixth Sense, not The Village, but this sort of Shyamalan twist in the whole thing, where it goes from looking like a basically just a slice of life high school story to something, well, like you say, so much bigger and so much more interesting. But that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way at first.
Yeah, and I think part of that was because people thought it was an ending. Like a lot of times the whole it was just a dream thing is how something ends.
Ah,
And I hate that myself. Like I think
yeah,
that's a terrible cop out ending, which was part of why I wanted to do this comic was I thought it would be so much more interesting as a middle. Like what happens when you
right.
wake up and realize that basically everyone who's ever been nice to you lives inside your head.
Ah, yeah. And there's I'm gonna try to wrap my head around this because there's sort of an inception thing going on here. You've got the real world, which makes very few appearances in this. Very little of the comic takes place in what is the true real world. There's the dream, and then there's the world that sort of exists behind the dream. Exit stage left, open the door, and you're into the dream world, which is not the dream you were having, but the world within which they're putting on this production of the dream. So there's many layers of this.
Yeah.
It's a really what was, I mean, aside from just waking up and it was all a dream, but I mean that how did you come up with that? What was the inspiration for that? Because it's a very deep world. It's a really next level stuff going on there.
I guess, well, for one thing, I actually did have a dream where it's just a normal dream, and then all of a sudden, all the people in my dream do become actors and they break character and, like,
Oh,
take a smoke break behind the scenery and all of that. And, just start talking to me like I'm one of the other actors. And, isn't this a weird dream that we're making right now?
is that a common dream for performers? Is that like how every student sleeps through the whole class and then has to take the test or whatever? Like,
I wasn't performing a whole lot back
oh,
then,
okay,
but I
okay.
will say yes, that actually is at least like 3 times a week I have a dream where I've screwed up this show irreparably.
Oh, jeez.
Like we just rolled into town and I
Oh,
realized I left all my costumes in the last
oh,
city and I have to do the whole show in my street clothes
oh,
or
God. That must feel horrible.
yeah, 3 times a week or so.
Oh,
But I never get stage fright. I get it all out in my subconscious and then I
oh,
just go on stage and I'm never scared.
yeah. Now, how much? I'm also curious how much of Fiona's experience in the dream, which is the dream that's represented as the real world for a while until you learn that's a dream. But how much of what she's experiencing there with her friends, with her schools, how much is that drawn from your own experience?
Not a whole lot. It's drawn a lot more from other friends that I knew. I was very lucky to have a pretty supportive family
Mm-hmm.
and friends. But a lot of my friends were not so lucky. They
Yeah,
had to go home to a much worse home life with parents who didn't accept them.
right.
And,
So
they were
you were
from
out.
religions that were
Mm,
less cool about it.
right. You were out in high school then, is that right?
I was,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Okay. Okay. I particularly loved the prom scene where you have the two girls and the two boys, and to keep up the pretense, they're going as two heterosexual couples, but when you look at them from behind, the two boys are holding hands and the two girls are holding hands.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that was I was going to ask if that was drawn from any kind of personal anecdote or not, but
not my own, but I know that it happens. You know,
right.
I've talked to people who have done that very thing.
Oh wow. Wow. So two questions I've got to ask, and these are both kind of out of left field because so nobody's going to really understand this. Although, guys, I do recommend that you do read it. It's up, and I think you can link to it both from Meaty Yogurt and from rosolarian.com. It's a really fantastic work. It is finite. It is finished. It's very long, but it does begin and end. So it's not a serial thing that goes on forever. But two questions. Well, one, how did you come up with the character of Clandestine Jones?
It was completely accidental. She was just a background character.
Yeah.
That her first appearance, she was just meant to be a background character, and I thought, I really like her design.
Yeah.
What can I do with her? This was back before I scripted all my comics ahead of time.
Okay.
So I just kind of was doing some improv, and what can I do with this character? And when I realized she was going to stick around, I was like, well, what part could she actually play in the story?
Completely fucking insane.
Yeah.
I mean, and yet in such a childlike and naive and seemingly harmless way, except that she very, very creepy and just, but at the same time, like adorably cute. And yeah, it's one of those characters that really sticks with you. And
she's definitely a fan favorite. I get requests to draw her more than any other character.
I can believe it. Now the other thing, and maybe I'm just forgetting something, but you had a really cool. So it wasn't the villain. It wasn't Sadako. It was the No Face character.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to No Face? I don't remember any resolution with that, or did I just forget it?
I'm pretty sure one of the characters killed him. I think it was well, I don't want to give too much away.
No, don't. Okay, then I'm gonna have to just go back and read it. And guys, definitely check it out because it is really fantastic. I highly recommend it, and it's one of my favorites of all time. Seriously, it's great.
Oh, thanks.
And the other thing, just to mention, I really love the different art styles too, and that's something else, guys. You can kind of tell what world you're in by the art styles because you've got sort of a black and white, almost manga style, to a very colorful, cartoony style, to claymation, to actual real life photographs of people.
Yes.
Yeah. Who are the people you used, by the way? Were those friends of yours or stock pictures? Where did the
no, it was
the actual real life Sarah and Fiona come from?
Fiona was
not
me.
Sarah. It wasn't Sarah.
Fiona and Leah.
Sarah's the bully. That's right, Leah.
Yeah. So Fiona was me. I originally had hired a model, and she kept backing out.
Okay.
And I realized, like, I'm going to need someone who can always be here at the drop of a hat whenever I need her.
Right.
So that was the only reason I used myself. I really didn't want people to see me as Fiona. I already had a problem with people sort of conflating the two of us, people saying, oh, Fiona did this bad thing, therefore Megan must think that bad thing is good because Megan would only draw main characters who
well, I can kind of see where it would be tempting to assume author avatar. I mean, roughly, that with the age and lesbian and red hair and all that, and there's sort of there does seem to be like there could be a temptation to do something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I understand why they would. I didn't want to be the model, but I just couldn't find anyone else, so I did it. And then towards the end, when we see Fiona again, I actually used my younger sister because it's a different version of Fiona. It's not the exact same Fiona.
Yeah.
So my younger sister looks enough like me that I figured she could be Fiona 2.0. And then my friend Tegan was Leah.
Okay. Now the other one, I guess and again you've got a lot of comics out there, but I think of the big three as those two, and then the other one, which I want you to tell us a little bit about it, but also it serves as kind of a cautionary tale, I think, and for the sake of anyone out there who is also creating work and looking to monetize something, there's a bit of a cautionary tale, and that's, of course, I've been kidnapped by lesbian pirates from outer space.
Yeah, that
So,
one.
I guess first of all, what was it all about?
It was about a girl
Hmm.
who gets kidnapped
By lesbian
by
pirates from outer
lesbian
space.
pirates from outer space.
And I
It's
apologize because this was the only one. It was I had read You and Me Dream. I was following Meaty Yogurt back. This was early on when it was still not updating like regularly. It was kind of like there could be a couple months in between updates for a while there, and it was kind of like just to get my Megan Gedris fix. I started reading that one, and within about 10 pages, I think you had to take it down. It was about this. It was about that
oh
time.
no.
So I mean, I got the impression this is sort of like a. I mean, there's definitely some satire in there, but sort of a high adventure, Star Wars, Star Trek, but also I mean, I guess what are the yeah, tell us fill in a little bit more than the title, I guess,
Yeah,
plot wise.
okay, so it's, sort of set in a 1960s sci-fi world.
Yeah, yeah,
This very naive, perky heroine, totally unaware of, that lesbians even exist, and thrust into this world of adventure when she is kidnapped by these pirates who
right.
think they're her queen or their princess, and they're going to take her to the queen,
Uh,
and all of these misadventures on the way.
hmm.
And so a lot of satire. I was obsessed with like 1950s lesbian pulp novels for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah.
Oh, I love
And
those. I
then
have a big collection.
combine that with kind of the old school like Silver Age space comics.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Now, why can't I read that?
because 19-year-old Megan
Uh-huh.
very stupidly didn't read the contract that she signed
Uh-huh.
when she unknowingly sold the rights to Platinum Studios
Right.
for the
Okay.
entire comic and the characters and the title and everything
Wow.
forever and ever. 19-year-old Megan thought, I am way too small of a fry to need to talk to a lawyer
Mm-hmm.
about this.
Yep.
And these people are so nice to me. They're
Right.
being so nice and they really like my work, and surely they wouldn't, take advantage of me. Surely this is just a good, exciting opportunity that I should take without questioning it.
Right. Right. And they haven't even done anything with the property though, have they?
They published the first 6 issues.
Uh-huh.
They did a short run, I think, of about 1,000 copies of each,
Right.
back in 2007, 2008,
Uh-huh.
and then nothing since then.
Wow. And they're not interested in rescinding that or talking to you about. I mean, is this something that you'd want to get control of back, either to continue it or do something else with it?
I would love to.
Mm.
I had all kinds of plans. I did 3 story arcs, so I did 18 issues,
Mm-hmm.
and I had plans for another 6 more. But I got to a point where I realized, I can't continue to work on this comic knowing that I don't have total control over its fate,
Mm.
and that I never will get to, self-publish a collection or even have any sort of collection, since Platinum doesn't seem to be on the ball about putting together any sort of
Right.
paperback edition or printing it ever again. I'd be willing to do that all myself, but
Yeah.
not for a comic that I don't own. I don't
Sure.
want to. I just couldn't continue to put my heart and soul into it. It
Yeah.
still has a large chunk of my heart and soul, and it always will. Like, it just permanently took this chunk of me, which I never thought it would. I came up with this idea, and I didn't love it at first. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought, if it doesn't work out with this comic, then whatever, I don't care. Someone else can have
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was going to grow into something I would love so much.
So I guess a cautionary tale for the creators out there. Now, aside from those, now because yeah, I've probably said it several times that you got a ton of different comics out there. You've got several strips over on Filthy Figments.
Yes.
Sell us a bit about some of that.
It's all porno comics.
Yeah.
Some people will say erotica. I say
Mhm.
it's porn.
Okay.
It's straight up hardcore, very graphic pornography. in comic book form. And all of the artists are women,
Mm-hmm.
and our advertising is primarily towards women. Like, our focus is women.
Yeah.
It's not that guys can't or don't read it. There's
Right.
tons of guy readers, but we just wanted to do something that caters to female desire
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, just keeping women as sort of the primary target audience.
Right. Now, you've got, I've, and in a lot of these you can, again, link to from rosalarian.com, but there's Honey, It's Better, Down Where It's Wetter, which is sort of a pornographic version of The Little Mermaid, it seems.
Yep.
Eat Me. Now that's, I was not actually able to find that one, but that tells a bit about that, because that looks out there.
That one was, okay, so we have a few rules on our website about what we can and can't portray on the site.
Okay.
And one of the rules is no vampires. This is because our credit card company won't let there be blood and sex in the same scene, so you can't have vampires. Also, it cuts down on people submitting Twilight fan fiction, I think.
Okay, well, yeah, but that's an oddly specific rule for that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, specifically, no vampires.
Okay.
Or technically, you're not supposed to have any like non-human monsters. Or
so
anything.
this is kind of like, oh, well, I mean, aside from the porn, this is like the old comics code almost.
Almost, yeah. Like, there's sort of a comics code for porn comics still. There's still restrictions over what you if there's a nipple in the comic, then there's a whole bunch more rules than if there's not a nipple in the comic. So I got this
that
idea.
has to be funnier than anything you've written. That's if there's and I'm just trying to picture there's somewhere in this world there's a conference room with a bunch of guys in short sleeve button up shirts and pocket protectors trying to figure out where to draw the lines of decency here.
Oh, I know.
For the sake of a porn.
It's so arbitrary what you can and can't show.
Oh my God.
And so, you know, but you always got to try and push the boundaries as far as they can go.
Yeah. So how does yeah, getting back to this one, how does, yeah.
So with vampires, you know, sexy vampires. Right. From the vampire's perspective, if they're sexing up a human, they're basically sexing up their food.
Oh, I get it.
And so with Eat Me, I sort of took the whole thing and shifted it to where you have a bunch of human characters and a bunch of like sexy anthropomorphic food people.
Right. Gotcha.
And so the humans are put in this world where all the food is made of people. All the food, and they're alive. All the food is made of people, and they're alive and walking around being very sexy. So, you know, if you're nice to them and you seduce them a little bit, they'll let you have a bite or two. And it's really weird. It's really weird. I think I was on a lot of Sudafed when I came up with it. I had like a really terrible flu, and I had accidentally taken twice as much Sudafed as you're supposed to. And
a little loopy.
I was really loopy.
Oh, wow.
And I started drawing all this weirdness, and
it was, well, I almost, and again, I don't, not insinuating anything or anything, but I almost got a bit of an Adventure Time vibe from what little I was able to see, and the idea of people being food, because I think of like the Candy Kingdom and Adventure Time. Was that an inspiration, or did they steal your idea?
I didn't even think about that at all. Huh. I see it now that you say it.
Okay.
But yeah, I totally wasn't thinking about that. I was more inspired by like cute, weird manga that I've read, like Junko Mizuno, which just has this, you know, it's a really cute style, you know, almost like Powerpuff Girls kind of style.
Yep.
And then, you know, all of this weirdness with the eating people and sexy food people and just sort of this juxtaposition of cute and creepy.
Right. So now, and there's got a lot of other stuff out there. I just tonight, actually, kind of in preparation for this, I was sort of reading over. I read The Garden.
Oh,
yeah. Now that was, and it's, I guess, just well, if you want to give a brief description of the plot there, but I want to ask you about that.
So I'm trying to remember. I drew it so long ago.
Okay, well, I could give it a shot.
Sure.
Well, basically,
You just read it.
it's the guy. Yeah. But the guy he learned that his wife is not really in love with him, and she's in love with, I believe that was her brother or cousin or something like that, and he was heartbroken about it, and it's basically a plot to murder them.
Yes.
In sort of an odd way. And now that was a 24-hour comic, right?
Yeah, I drew it in 24 hours, not consecutively.
Oh, I was going to ask you how those work.
What I did, I set a timer for myself, 1 hour for each page.
Okay.
And so every page took an hour or less. So it actually, some of the pages took less than an hour. It was probably like a 22-hour comic.
That is crazy to me, and I know, and I've talked to I've had a couple cartoonists on the show, but it is crazy to me to think of doing any one of those pages in an hour. I did a webcomic myself for about 2 years, and it was seriously amateur hour, and even with that, it was all I could do to get a simple 4-panel thing up once a week, and I just can't imagine doing those pages in an hour, and then it's 24 pages long. That's, you gotta be flying. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was. I draw fast. That was during a period where I was working a full-time job and also putting out 6 pages of webcomic every week.
Wow.
So, which was why I couldn't do like the traditional 24-hour comic where you stay awake for 24 hours and you just do it. I didn't have 24 full hours off from work.
So this doesn't count as the official one for those who have actually done the 24 straight.
Yeah, I had to. I could do it now. I could do something like that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never, at that time, that was like 6 or 7 years ago. I did what I could, and I had this idea for a comic, and I had attempted it several times. It started as a class assignment in high school. That's where the story came from, and then I just spent like 5 or 6 years trying to turn it into a comic.
I'm almost wondering what the reaction of the teacher would have been, because it's a bit out there. It's dark. There were tones of murder, adultery, incest. There's a lot going on in that story.
It was during our lesson on Edgar Allan Poe. So we were challenged to write something, dark and strange with some sort of ironic twist to it. We were studying irony, and we were studying Poe.
Okay. So, I can definitely see the Poe influence. If Poe, that ties a lot of it together.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Now, are there any other particular faves of yours that we haven't hit upon? Anything else that people should check out or that's out there? Did I miss anything? I missed a lot, actually.
Yeah,
but I guess
I know. There's just so much stuff. I do a lot of comics on Tumblr. Not as many these days.
What's the Tumblr address?
Rosalarian.tumblr.com.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'll do, just sort of short stories on there, like 1-page stories. And then there's a comic called Comic Stripper, which is my tour diary from being on the road with the burlesque.
Okay.
Because a lot of weird shit happens.
You don't say.
So, yeah, right? A lot of strange, interesting stuff happens. So I started keeping a diary that I draw it on the bus, while the bus is rolling down the road. So it can be a little shaky.
So I was going to say, you probably don't get a lot of drawing done in Michigan when you're driving around these roads.
Yeah, none of the roads. I can't. There's the whole country is just ravaged with potholes. It's terrible.
So now, how long have you been doing comics full time now? Professionally or
on periods of doing it full time. I've done it full time for a little while. Then I got bored. A few years ago, I was doing comics full time, and it was before I was doing the burlesque. And I found that I would just go like a week or more not talking to anybody, like not ever leaving the house.
Just because you're so engrossed in the project.
Yeah, and just didn't have a reason to go outside. So I decided to take a day job again. I worked in a cheese shop for many years. I was a cheesemonger.
I saw that on your profile there. Yes, cheesemonger.
Yes, I very much enjoyed being a cheesemonger. But after a while, cutting cheeses took a toll on my wrists,
Hmm.
and I don't ever want anything to get in the way of me continuing with
Oh,
comics.
right, right.
So, and I realized, I don't need a day job. And at this point, I've got the burlesque to give me a reason to get out of the house and talk to people.
Yeah.
So I decided to quit the day job
Hmm.
a few months ago, and then immediately hurt my wrist.
Oh my God.
So I haven't drawn for 6 or 7 weeks now,
Oh,
which
this
is,
was recently.
yeah, this
Oh,
is still
wow.
ongoing. Like, I still have like at least 6 weeks until I'm fully healed.
Oh, geez.
But this is the longest period I've gone without drawing anything since I was like 2.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Wow.
there's so many hours in the day that I didn't know about because I would spend all of them drawing.
Okay. Because I noticed in one of the facts from one of the comics, I think somebody had asked, how you learned how to draw, or and you basically just said hours and hours and hours of practice. So you've been so to ask you how long you've been doing comics or art, or how long you've been drawing, I mean, you're going back to 2 years old, basically.
Yeah, well, basically everyone draws when they're a
Oh,
little
well,
kid.
yeah, yeah.
And then, some people put down the crayons and others never do.
Uh-huh.
I think I was 8 or 9 when I realized that comics were drawn by human beings and I could be one of them.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
up until then, they seemed like they were sort of handed down from the gods fully
Right,
formed.
right.
And I was at Girl Scout camp, and one of the chaperones was a comic artist, and she was drawing a page of comics during our dinner break.
Oh,
I
okay.
remember she was drawing something about a unicorn,
Uh-huh.
and that was when I realized that was a job I could do, and that was when that became the only job I would ever want to do.
Wow. And that's a very young age to come to that realization. So
And yeah, I
wow.
feel like just knowing what I wanted to do. I mean, I didn't get into any trouble in high school because I spent all of my time alone in my room drawing comics instead of going out and getting into trouble. And
So the secret is dedication, basically.
it is.
Damn, and see, I thought there was some magic bullet or something.
Not that I've found. Not that I've found. It's and this isn't to say that you have to start when you're 8. This
Well, yeah,
isn't like,
but
ballet
you do.
where it's really hard to get into it if you don't start
Yeah.
when you're a child.
But like anything else, to get good at it, you do have to put in the time. There's no.
You do.
Yeah.
I mean, people say, and I say this in Meaty Yogurt, actually, someone brings this up, that they say it's about 10,000 hours of work
Yes.
before you're good at something.
Yes. Way too much for Jackie.
Way too much for Jackie. She can do like maybe 100.
Okay, I was gonna guess 10, but yeah, I guess a little
10
more
is
than that.
more
But
common. Yeah.
So so then I guess, I mean, the show is a little bit of a political leaning show. So I got a couple questions on sort of the religion politics side of things. So when did you decide to become a lesbian? No, I'm joking.
Let's see. I think
When was that conscious choice made?
it was in '03 or
Well, and you'd mentioned that you were out in high school, but you said that your family and friends were very supportive.
They were,
Yeah,
and it was, at least my immediate family has
yeah,
always been very supportive of everything that I do, and it's really nice to not have to be distracted
yeah,
by,
yeah.
struggling with that
Right.
people don't realize how valuable it is to have family support, both in, who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
It's been very valuable.
Yeah. And you mentioned that when you were talking about some of your friends that were not as fortunate in that area, you also mentioned religion. Well, less tolerant or less cool with it religions. Now, was religion much of a part of your upbringing then, or?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
we were Catholic.
Oh,
We had
really?
to go
Okay.
we had to go to church, all the time. I
Oh,
had to
yes.
take extracurricular after
Oh,
school
yes, I did that
Catholic
too. Yep.
classes. Yeah. But the Catholic side of my
CCC.
family was the liberal one.
Okay.
They were pretty cool with everything. I never, got shit for it. But then there were other Catholics that I knew that were a little more hardcore about it.
Right.
And a lot of the Catholics that I grew up with took the stance of like, the Pope is just a weird guy in a funny hat who lives a long, long, long way away. And he has some things to say,
Right.
and we don't really have to listen that hard.
Kind of the definition of, well, I guess cynically, one might say the cafeteria Catholic, but
yeah,
I think, but at the same time, I think I think I've got this real moron thing I do called thinking, and I think that's kind of a little bit healthier. Perhaps way to look at it. Now, are you still involved in the church at all? Do you still practice?
Oh no!
Okay.
As soon as I could stop going to church every Sunday, I stopped going to church.
I'm with you. I'm the same way. For better or worse.
Religion has always made me somewhat uncomfortable. I don't fault religious people for their religion, but me personally, I was never particularly comfortable with it, even at a young age.
And you know what? And this is, I assume I don't know if this is unique to the Catholics, but I always found, even as a kid, I was always creeped out when the time in the Mass came to say the Apostles' Creed. And you have 300 people all saying, I believe this, I believe this, I believe this. Oh, like in unison. It's like the Borg. I mean, it's like,
it is.
It's kind of, and I'm looking around
forever. Yeah. Like if you come up to me and you say, peace be with me, I will always automatically say, and also with you. Yes. There's no way to stop it.
And that sort of just it's a rote declaration of belief, which in and of itself is kind of ironic, but to hear hundreds of people all saying it in unison, even as a kid, I would just look around and be like, is anybody else creeped out by that?
Are we really doing this?
Yeah. So another one, I guess, along those same lines. I mean, why do you people keep wanting to trample over everyone else's religious freedom, huh?
I don't know. And it's so easy not to, because I did grow up with people who, or I guess
that's a joke question, by the way, in case anybody's not clear about that.
I had it reversed. Why would religious people trample over other people's freedom?
No. The gays, man, they're just ruining it for everybody.
Yeah, obviously.
I mean, with you wanting to cater your weddings with pizza and buy cakes and stuff.
I probably would cater my wedding with pizza.
Oh!
Or cheese, at least.
Well,
but I've never met a homophobic cheesemonger, so.
No, I read something this morning about I think that was the bakery that decided they weren't going to bake, I think it was a lesbian couple, the cake. And they settled, the suit was, and granted, lawsuits are never settled until all the appeals and everything's done. But I think the initial award was like $135,000. And I'm looking at this going, gee, I think it might have been easier just to bake the fucking cake.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I'm sure I sold cheese to plenty of assholes. I mean, people would come up to my cheese counter in like those creepy pro-life shirts where they have like a picture of a fetus on it.
Oh,
and like,
God.
Yeah, like creepy kind of pro-life apparel. I would still very nicely sell them cheese because my job was to sell them cheese.
Right. Well, I'm like, how is it an imposition to bake somebody a cake when you went into the cake baking business?
I don't think I'm going to change anyone's mind about their life by
refusing to sell them cheese.
Or
no cheese for you. Oh, God. The other, I guess, in getting a little bit more serious. So there's a pretty big upcoming Supreme Court decision regarding same-sex marriage.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, any thoughts, predictions?
I mean, I think we're so close. It's just going to happen. They're just going to drag those few stragglers into the 21st century.
And about time.
My main concern has always just been to remind people that gay rights isn't going to be solved when that happens. Like, I'm terrified that this is going to pass and everyone's just going to say, wipe off their hand. That's a wrap, everybody. We can go home. Gay rights are solved.
Yeah. Well, kind of like how there's no racism anymore because we've elected a black president.
Exactly. Exactly. You know,
Yeah.
and even when I was a kid, like I remember when in 2004 when the anti-sodomy laws were struck down,
Right.
and then a few months later Massachusetts passed gay marriage.
Yeah.
And then everyone was jumping on the gay marriage train, and I was like, I think we've got a couple other steps in between these two things. Like you can finally have gay sex without going to jail. and that doesn't, to me, there's a few more steps before you get to marriage.
Right. Well, and that's just it. As I think they've kind of given up. I think to me the right wing has kind of given up on the marriage issue, and so they've started in first of all now on the religious freedom angle. So basically, oh hey, you're allowed to marry? Great, let's bring back discrimination because that's always a good way forward.
And you are seeing more and more laws being passed where we got to make sure we can still tell this lesbian couple they can't rent our apartment. You got to make sure that, you know, transgender people don't get anything ever.
Oh, well, I've interviewed both on my blog and on the show here. I've interviewed a couple of transgender people, and we've kind of all sort of nodded our heads in this. And I think that with the giving up on sort of the LGB part of the culture war, because I think the marriage was the big one for a lot of people, and that's basically a lost battle. They've now sort of turned their sights on the transgender community with like the bathroom bills, and they're fighting over the schools now, and so yeah, which in a sort of weird and perverse way is kind of a sign of progress, I guess.
At least transgender people are getting noticed.
Not in the best way, but yeah.
Before it was just an occasional punchline on a sitcom.
Right. And that's also hasn't, I mean,
that
I think
hasn't
not
changed,
just, well, I think it's gotten better.
There's a few more, there's still just as many punchlines, but they are at least being met with a few more positive portrayals.
Right. And I think it's also good that while you do have a contingent that wants to, well, essentially force their religious freedom down your throat, that these laws have generally not been popular. I mean, there's been a very strong and almost immediate backlash from, well, the public, but also from corporations, which is an odd sort of bellwether of progress, because it's kind of like when the big money suddenly gets behind you, when they realize it's not good for business anymore. That's sort of a sign of, it's not necessarily a sign that anyone celebrates, but I was kind of struck by how many companies came out and said, no, we're not going to do this. And I thought, wow, corporations is a sign of making progress.
And corporations are sort of, since they are people now, and corporations have more power than any politicians.
Right. Oh, no, no question.
Gotta, instead of writing to my senator about this bill, I'm going to write to, Walmart about it. That seems to actually make things happen a little more.
Right.
If a multi-billion-dollar corporation gives a shit, that's when you actually stand a chance.
And it was, and I think I think it's very encouraging that they do, which for what that's wow. Well, Megan, thank you so much for coming on the program. I really appreciate you taking your time. The website, rosalarian.com, and then also Meaty, it's meatyyogurt.com, correct?
Yep, all one word.
So go ahead, check it out. Is there a Patreon on those?
Yes, there is. I do have a Patreon.
Yep, check that out. Support the arts, and thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
As always, if you have any questions or comments about anything you've heard here tonight, please feel free to email me at niceguy9418@usa.com. Good night, and thank you for tuning in.